The following interview was conducted with Stella Cassandra Warfield by Gordon Olson, the Grand Rapids City historian. The interview took place on Friday, August 19th, 1983, in the office of the city historian. In the interview, Miss Warfield discusses her recollections of growing up in Grand Rapids, including her experiences in the flood of 1904.
Okay. Yeah. Why don't you begin, Miss Warfield, by telling me just a little bit about some of the family history research you've been doing and what you know about the early history of your family.
Well, strangely enough, I haven't done too much actual research. I did not intend that this family history of mine or family story would be a very scientific genealogy. I felt that at my age of 87, the best I could do was to give them what I have.
Mm-hmm.
And provide the information necessary for them to continue any research that they'd like to do.
Okay.
Now, my family apparently came from New York. They were English. They were English to begin with.
Do you have any notion of what part of New York they came from?
Yes, they settled in and around Manchester and Canandaigua.
Mm-hmm.
There was a man by the name of Thomas J. Warfield who died in 1888. I have the evidence for this. It's an excerpt from sort of a tabloid newspaper that was published at that time. And he must have had a very large estate because there are approximately 125 names listed there. And among those names are the names of my grandfather and three great uncles. And the two uncles and my grandfather are from Michigan. So that I recognize that they are the family of my family. And when they came here, I don't know.
Do you know where?
Ionia.
Okay.
Yeah. And they settled in Ionia. And then my maternal grandparents, they settled in Lake Odessa. They came up from Ohio, in the about I would say 1850.
Do you have a notion of where in
Or even a
Ohio?
little later than that, about 18, maybe about 18, late 50s, 1859 or 60 or something like that. Because the youngest one, they were all born in Ohio.
Do you know where in Ohio?
Massillon, Ohio. They were all born there. And I don't know what brought them into Michigan, but they settled in Lake Odessa.
Mm-hmm.
They cleared the land, and they must have taken up a homestead of some kind.
That may well be what brought them up here.
They cleared the land and cut down the trees, built a log house, and lived there.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, when she was old enough to go to work outside the home, she was an excellent pastry cook, and she went to work at the Bailey House in Ionia. It was there that my father met her, because his father lived in Lyons. They had, as I've been told by them, they had some sort of a halfway house, and that was similar to our motels, but it had a barn on it and provision for putting up horses overnight, and they also had a dining room, a bar room, and they had room for a small number of guests.
That makes sense, because that was right on the main road,
right.
east and west across Michigan. So.
That's right. And so that was how my father and my mother met. And they were married in St. Peter and Paul's Church
In Ionia.
in Ionia.
Did they live in Ionia then for a time?
My parents lived there until we moved to Grand Rapids.
And about when was that?
And that must have been, I think I was about 4 years old. I think it must have been around 1901 or something like that, 1900 maybe.
What did your parents do in Ionia? What was your father's profession?
My father worked the car shops at first. I know that was when he actually was laid off. And after that, he was just an ordinary laborer. He didn't have any particular trade. He always worked for his father.
I see.
And when he was on his own, he had no trade. But my mother's people were farmers, and they built their house in Ionia and had a large garden. And then there were the uncles. There was Uncle Seth Warfield, who worked for Jack Weber. And Jack Weber was the one who went to Detroit, and he worked for J.L. Hudson Company, because he worked for Weber here. And Weber went to Detroit and became a partner of J.L. Hudson. And then my great uncle Seth, worked for J.L. Hudson.
Followed right along with Weber.
With Weber,
Uh-huh.
right.
Before I forget, what were your parents' names?
John, my father's name was John Edward Warfield, and my mother was Margaret Ann Leonard Warfield.
Are you, by any chance, related to the other Leonards of Grand Rapids? The refrigerator people, any of that?
No, I don't
That's a
think
different
so.
family.
A different family.
Okay. So about 1900 then, 1901, your family has moved to Grand Rapids. Do you know where they took up residence when they got here?
They were in the where we took up residence was on Stocking Street.
Okay.
And when we moved in this upper flat, and I spent I know that the first Christmas I had here, it was a delightful Christmas, because I was real small, and my mother and my father went over to my aunt's and spent the evening on the Christmas Eve, and took us with them about 9 o'clock. Well, she sent my brother and my sister to go out and do some shopping, or so-called shopping. But what they did was they went home and prepared all the things that Santa Claus would bring for me. And so when I got home, Santa Claus had already been there.
Mm.
And I was thrilled to death.
So there was a decorated tree for you then?
Yeah. But it was when we put popcorn made strands of popcorn and put it on the tree and put little candles on the Christmas tree.
Were there paper ornaments on the tree?
No, there were no paper ornaments.
Sometimes people did that too.
No.
You were telling me before we started this conversation a little bit about that first place you lived. It was an apartment, you said.
Yes.
Above a saloon, is that right?
That's right.
And wasn't it there that your brother had a rather serious... Well, that came a little later.
That came a little later.
Will you tell me about the incident involving your brother that we talked about earlier?
Well, later we moved to this place on Stowe Street. And it was there that he had this accident.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little later. That was when I was, it was after I was 5 because I was enrolled in St. James School.
Okay. And what happened?
He was told to put a stick of wood in the stove, and he didn't think that it was burning good enough, the wood burned good enough, and he raised up the kerosene can, I presume, and held it over the top of the stove and poured it in. And the flame ignited the whatever, maybe oil outside the kerosene can or whatever. It ignited it anyway, and blew into the can, blew up went all down the wall, all over the kitchen, and all over him.
And then what?
And he was taken to Butterworth Hospital.
Well, he went running out of the house first, didn't you
Yes,
say?
well, he ran down the street for a couple of blocks and threw himself down under this pump. And it was 2 days before Christmas, and so it was all icy around there. And this man came out and put a rag rug over him and smothered the flame. And then somebody carried him home, and we got the doctor for him. And before the doctor came, neighbors came in, and they suggested that my mother put linseed oil on him. They brought in a bottle of linseed oil and had him, his side and his back all covered, and his abdomen all covered with pledgets of cotton and linseed oil. And when the doctor came, he had to take out take all that off. And it took the flesh right out with it.
It was a very serious...
It was a very serious wound.
And it was a long time before he recovered.
He had skin grafting done 5 times, took the skin from both thighs, and once or twice from one of them anyway. I know they took it twice from one thigh and grafted this on his body.
Fire was always a threat during those times, wasn't it?
Yes.
Because you had stoves,
You had stoves,
open fires,
yes, and
lamps, lanterns, candles.
That's right.
In fact, you had a little problem with fire yourself, didn't you?
Oh.
Later on.
Well, the fire that I had was in Iona.
Oh, earlier then.
That was earlier.
Uh-huh.
That was when I was playing with dolls, and my mother had to go out for some reason or other, and we had an aunt, a great aunt that lived next door, Aunt Sarah, and she always asked Aunt Sarah to come and to keep an eye on us, but she did tell us that we could go upstairs to play, where we had dolls and all that sort of thing, toys, and I had a little girl with me, but after I threw the thing in the stand cover in the clothes closet.
Let's back up a little bit. What caused you to do that, first of all?
I was frightened.
And how did the fire get started?
Oh, I wanted to blow. The chimney the lamp was burning, and forgotten to blow it out herself. And so the lamp was burning. When I found it, I thought that I could blow it out, but I couldn't. And when I blew, I held it under the fringe on a table stand cover. And that fringe, I blew and blew and blew, and that fringe caught fire. And then I was real frightened when I saw the blaze, and I pulled that thing off from there and running through it in the clothes closet just to get rid of it. I presume, get it out of my hands.
You were maybe, what, 3 or 4 years old then?
Yeah, I was between 3 and 4.
Uh-huh, sure. Didn't know that much about fire.
No.
And it just ignited more in the clothes closet.
Oh, sure. It's smoldered, for a long time, in those feathers and everything.
And then?
And then my mother came home, and by that time, the neighbors were down there with a bucket brigade, and the families that lived around us at that time were the Schwinders across the street, the Weatherwaxes, and the Dillonbecks.
And they all helped and tried to put out
They all helped to put out the fire.
Quite a bit of damage was done, though.
Oh, dreadful. The whole top floor was almost completely in complete ruins.
Uh-huh.
And as I say, it would cost so much, or it did cost so much to do something about it. I wouldn't be surprised if they did put a mortgage on the house and then found it difficult to pay it or something, and just finally sold the house
and moved to Grand Rapids.
Rapids.
Because there was no insurance on the house.
No, there was no insurance on the house.
You hadn't been in Grand Rapids too many years when there was a major disaster for the entire city.
That was in the flood.
Yeah, and you were sort of in the middle of that too.
That's right.
What do you recollect about this? Was 1904 when the Grand River flooded worse than it ever had before or since.
That's right. Well, we lived on West Wealthy Avenue, and
where on West Wealthy? Do you remember the intersection or roughly where it was?
No, it was in the middle of the block, and it was at the very last street in the city. It was the very last street where there were any houses built.
On the west side going...
On the west side.
Okay, so quite a ways out then.
Yes, it was.
Where it's not supposed to flood.
Well, we were I would judge that we were about a mile from the river.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think much further than that.
Okay.
And when I can remember the water started pouring in around around afternoon, 2 or 3 o'clock, 3 or 4 o'clock, and we little kids stood out in the yard and just let it pour in on us. And it was strangely enough, I didn't know what time of year it was, but it was warm enough because we stood out there and had it pour in. And
you're playing in the water then.
Yeah, we were having fun, and it continued to rise until it reached the second window sash in our house. And we had stairs that went upstairs right opposite the door. And after this, we were there about a week in the flood when the city officials or the officer came to our house in the night and told us that that our house was going to lose its foundation, and that that they would have to evacuate us. And so we just got up and just put on whatever clothes we could find at the moment and rushed downstairs. And we had put all the furniture upstairs and everything that we could get up there, so it was terribly crowded. And but we got down the stairs, and they rowed the boat into the stairway, and we got into the boat, and they rowed us over. It seemed to me it was a couple of blocks or a block and a half or something. It was quite a long distance, and then we went in a hack down to
Which is a horse and buggy or horse and car.
It was a horse-drawn hack,
Mm-hmm.
and we were carried down to the Clarendon Hotel, and we stayed there. It seemed to me that it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It was at least 2 weeks, and I think it was more like 3 weeks.
Yeah. Were there other refugees from the flood at the Clarendon too then?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that.
Do you remember anything about how they took care of you during that period? Did you take your meals right there at the hotel?
Yes.
And
But my father had to go out and buy me a dress and my brother a blouse to wear before they would take us in that dining room.
I see. Where was the Clarendon located here?
Up here at the corner of Monroe and Bridge Street.
Okay, so it was high and dry.
Yeah, and the Grand Trunk Depot was just the other side of it.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what your house was like when you finally could get back to it?
Oh, it had inches of mud. I don't know how many, but there were just loads of mud in it.
What?
And we couldn't, we cleaned it out, and I know that we were there for a little while, but the odor was terrible. But then we immediately looked for something over on the east side.
And you moved again?
And we moved again.
Where did you move to then?
I think that the only place that my father could find at that time was something on Market Street, as I recall it. And it was a house that had been moved in to Market Street. Yes. And it still had, it was on stilts.
Just blocked up.
Blocked up.
I see.
And there wasn't a wall under it all the way. There was a partial wall under it, but not all. And
It could have gotten kind of cold in the wintertime.
it was. We lived there a while because I don't know whether it was that first winter that we kids had diphtheria.
Were you quarantined?
Yes. We were quarantined for 21 days.
How did you get food and things into the house when you're quarantined? Was your father able to go to work while you were quarantined?
Yes. It was a house that they were trying to rebuild it, you know. And so there was a portion of the house, I think there were 2 rooms that were separated from the rest of the house by a hallway. And my father and my 2 oldest brothers lived in those 2 rooms during that time. And the rest of us lived in the other part. My sister and my youngest brother and myself, but I'm the youngest.
And you all had diphtheria during that time, or?
No, I had it. I came down with it first, and then I don't know who. I think it was my brother that had it. But he was only sick really because by the time that they thought I was going to die. And I can remember my mother, they wanted to take me to the hospital. At that time, the communicable disease hospital was the pest house. And my mother just braced herself against the door and she said, "You will never take my child to the pest house." She said, "If she's going to die, she'll die right here."
A lot of other people were taken to the pest house.
Oh, a lot of people were. Well, I didn't. I was there. And the doctor finally came along and said, well, he said, there's a new drug on the market, penicillin. And he said, we will try it and hope that it does something. So I was one of the experiments with the new drug.
And it worked?
And it worked.
Obviously. Well, let's switch to a little bit more pleasant things for a couple minutes. And one of the things that I'm always interested in is the kind of recollections that people have about their school days and what went on when they were in school. Do you have recollections of what it was like in school, what went on during a school day, things of that sort?
Sure. I can't remember too much about what went on in school, but I do know that we went to St. James, and I had a sister, Adrian, for a teacher in the first grade, and she was a wonderful teacher and a wonderful person, and we must have stayed in that area, for some time. Even when we lived on West Wealthy Avenue, we came down to St. James School. And so we lived there in the area for about 3 years, because I was in the 4th grade when we went to the East Side and transferred to St. Andrew's School. And when I got over to St. Andrew's, my brother and I, youngest brother and I, we went to St. Andrew's. And when I got there, they asked me what grade I was in, and I said that I was in the 5th grade. And my brother was in the 5th grade. And I didn't want to be separated from him.
Did they let you stay in the 5th grade?
No.
No.
They gave me a test.
Uh-huh.
And because I couldn't do long division, I couldn't be in the 5th grade.
Were those teachers pretty firm disciplinarians?
Yes.
What kind of discipline did they use on the students?
They used a ruler.
Uh-huh. Across the hand?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And pretty good solid whack if the kids...
Yeah.
Did it work?
It would sting. Yeah. But I don't know, I wasn't a very hard child to get along with. There were a lot of things that I did that were foolish, but my mother and father had a great philosophy about punishment. They've never punished us for anything that we didn't do intentionally that was wrong. If it was accidental, or if it was something that we had a good intent in mind and it didn't turn out that way, well, they never punished us. And I know I've done some terrible things, such as the house and setting the fire. And then one time I went to clean up the bathroom, and it was I think it was the first place we lived over on Ionia Street, where we had a bathroom with the plumbing, the box and everything was up here, and you pulled a chain.
The water was above the...
That's right.
On the wall.
And
the tank.
The tank.
Mm-hmm.
And the pipes were just run down on the outside of the wall. You could see the pipes. And in this house, we lived on Ionia Street, Ionia and Prescott. And there was a hole in the plaster, and where the dampness from the pipe had caused this hole in the plaster, and I just thought it didn't look very good, and I was always the kid who was cleaning up, doing something, cleaning cupboards, cleaning drawers. I was always looking for a little surprise if my mother had to go to town or something and I was left. And I had been home that time with a little illness of some kind, and I was feeling pretty good, and I decided to clean up that bathroom. When I came to the hole in the wall, I thought, well, I'll see what I can do, and I got a little piece of material to tack in there. And the first time I put the tack in, it went the wrong place, but it went into the lead pipe. So I took the tack, I pulled the tack out, and all the water spurted out, And then I didn't know what to do with it, but I stuck the tack back in and and put a little piece of gum over it.
Held pretty good, I guess.
It worked beautifully. And while it was a very expensive bit of cleaning that I did, but my mother never punished me. They talked to me a lot, but they never punished me.
Well, your intentions were good. It was just your execution that left a little
That's
to be
right.
desired.
It sure did.
How about when you were a young girl here in Grand Rapids? There was time for games and